bringing the lights down? I know. It's nice to see our friends. And I'm glad to see you. Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Yvette Moy, and I'm the University of Washington's Director of Public Lectures, and we are housed in the graduate school. And I am so glad to see all your faces tonight. That's right. Tonight, we welcome our very first speaker of the academic year. She is an ER physician, an author, and founder and chief advisor of Advancing Health Equity, Dr. Uché Blackstock. That's right. And tonight, her talk is titled Unpacking Legacy from the Personal to the Systemic. I tell you that because there's another event upstairs, so if that's not what you're here for, you need to go upstairs. And you got to go through the lobby, I've been told. And Dr. Blackstock will be formally introduced tonight by the University of Washington School of Medicine's Assistant Dean for URMS and Career Development, Dr. Michelle Terry. Before I bring Dr. Terry on stage, I know, right? Heavy hitters tonight, right? Some tough ladies, I know, good audience. We have a few folks to thank, and we want to thank our partners at the University of Washington Alumni Association, and especially Amy Goodlow. She is a great friend of the Office of Public Lectures, and she always makes us shine. So we are so grateful to get to partner with her tonight. We want to thank our friends at the UW School of Medicine. They played an amazing role in hosting Dr. Blackstock for the 2 days she's been in town and has kept her schedule very full, and we were so grateful for their help. And of course, I want to thank all of the staff who have worked behind the scenes to make this all look so easy. And then finally, I want to thank all of you. Like us, we are working to embrace the novelty and change that's happening all around us. So I want to thank you for your patience. Thank you, as we work through these interesting times. So there we go. We also have some friends in the audience. You're all our friends. But I also want to point out that the UW's Evans School Next Generation of Leaders are supposed to be here. Where are you guys? Are you in the audience tonight? Man, they don't show up. It's undergrads. Always. How about the UW Honors Program students? Are you in the house? There we go. Our honors students always show up. Right on. Thanks for being here tonight. We're so glad to have you. And then we've got to go through a couple housekeeping items. If you haven't done so already, could you please silence your cell phones? Let's just be present for one another tonight, right? We ask that you refrain from video or audio recording this evening's lecture. We are live streaming and recording tonight's talk, and you'll be able to find that on the Office of Public Lectures YouTube channel. So please just do that. Please don't take photographs while our speaker's on stage. It just throws everybody off, so just don't do that. Tonight, you can ask questions one of two ways. If you're our friends on live stream, you can send in a question via our Slido QR, which they're going to throw up on the screen in a minute. And you should have gotten one in a link in your registration reminder. So there's the QR code for those of you who need it. And also, for those of you who are feeling pretty bold tonight, you can walk to the microphone stage right, which isn't there right now, but it will be. And we encourage you to ask a question related to tonight's topic in the form of a question. I'll remind you, don't worry, in case you forget. And then immediately following the talk this evening, Dr. Blackstock will be signing her book titled Legacy, A Black Physician Reckons with Racism in Medicine, over there, and you can purchase them as well over here from our friends from Elliott Bay. That's right, we love those guys. As I welcome Dr. Terry to the stage, I know you guys were out having church before we all started this, but I want to make sure you introduce yourself to the people sitting near you to make a friend tonight. Thank you.
All right. Welcome, beautiful community. Dr. Uché Blackstock is the founder and CEO of Advancing Health Equity and appears regularly on MSNBC and NBC News and is a former associate professor in the Department of Emergency Medicine and a former faculty director for recruitment, retention, and inclusion in the Office of Diversity Affairs at New York University School of Medicine. In 2019, in December of 2019, Dr. Blackstock founded Advancing Health Equity, which partners with organizations to drive measurable change in health outcomes by embedding equity into leadership, strategy, and clinical practice. In its 5 years of existence, AHE has worked with over 100 major companies, hospitals, and health systems. Dr. Blackstock's writing, including numerous op-eds, has been featured in the Chicago Tribune, Scientific American, the Washington Post, and New York Magazine. She was recognized by Forbes magazine in 2019 as one of 10 diversity and inclusion trailblazers you need to get familiar with. In 2023, by Fortune magazine as one of 13 innovators shaping the future of health, and in 2024 as one of Time's 100 most influential people in health. In 2025, she received the NAACP's Dr. William Cobb Montague Health Equity Award. Dr. Blackstock received both undergraduate and medical degrees from Harvard University. Dr. Blackstock's generational memoir, Legacy, A Black Physician Reckons with Racism in Medicine, was published by Viking Books on January 23, 2024, and became an instant New York Times bestseller. Welcome to Seattle, Dr. Blackstock.
Oh, wait. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I am honored. You could have spent your Thursday evening anywhere, but you're here with me, so thank you. And I see so many friends in the audience. If you know me personally, raise your hand. See, I have so many friends. Thank you for coming. Okay, so the one thing I want to say is that also my talks are not like typical lectures. They're interactive. So I actually want to hear from you. I don't want to spend all this time talking at you, and so there are going to be mic runners in the audience, in the back, right? Yes, in the back. Okay, so if you want to say something, you just raise your hand, okay? There's Dr. Blackstock. Oh, hey, Doc. Doc, come over here. Thank you so much, Doc. Oh, there are the Blackstock girls. Your mother is amazing. So this is what my twin sister, Oni, and I heard as we walked through the hospital with our mother, Dr. Dale Blackstock. The year was 1986, and our mother was a physician at a public hospital in central Brooklyn. My sister, Oni, and I were about 9 years old as we witnessed our mother being beloved by everyone in the hospital. From her colleagues to the staff, even her patients were giving her a hug. Now, how many people are hugging their doctors? No, raise your hand. If you hug your doctors, raise your hand. I see one. Right, so most of us are not hugging our doctors. My mother was a petite woman who wore her hair in a natural fro. She was kind and warm, but when she was with her patients, she was so focused. She wanted to know exactly what was going on in their lives. After all, she'd grown up in the same Brooklyn neighborhood where they were from. She asked them what was going on with their family and friends. She wanted to know them well. And guess what? They loved her for it. They were always bringing tokens of appreciation for her, whether it was cookies or cake or a knitted shawl. So you won't believe this, but growing up, I thought every single physician, every single physician was a Black woman, like my mom. And this is why, because she used to take my sister and me with her to meetings of a local organization when she was president. A small group of Black women physicians who looked just like my mother would discuss projects and programs in our Brooklyn community. And these women, they were so brilliant. My sister and I would sit in the back of the room trying hard not to make any noise, listening in very intently. and not always understanding what they were saying, but knowing it was very important. When we got older, there was never any discussion that either one of us would pursue anything other than medicine. Our mother was amazing. She was our role model. We wanted to be just like her and her peers. They were our reality. But when I got older, I realized it wasn't the reality. Most people don't have this experience. And while I was fortunate to grow up with a mother who was a physician, it's also important to understand that my mother was a rarity. And so sadly, the number of Black physicians in this country remains stubbornly low. So what's the percentage? So I hear 1, I hear what else? 4%, what else? 5%, it's a little over 5%, it's like 5.4%, 2.6% Black men, and 2.8% Black women, and actually there's a smaller percentage of Black men today than there were in the early 1900s. So what's even, yeah, so how does this happen in 2025? How does this happen? I want to hear from you. How does this happen that we have such a small percentage of Black physicians? So just raise your hand. Raise your hand. Yes, right. Oh, you want to say something? Okay, so here and then here. Yes.
The Bakke case.
Okay, please use the microphone just so we have people who are listening in.
The Bakke case is one of them.
Okay.
The case, does anyone remember the Bakke case? The Bakke case was the case that went to the Supreme Court that challenged on the basis of what became known as reverse discrimination. I'm not curing anybody. No one remembers this. He could not, a white medical student candidate could not get into medical school and challenged at the Supreme Court level to say that his grades were better than a Black student candidate, and therefore he had a superior right to get into medical school. Supreme Court agreed. That was the beginning of the packed Supreme Court that we know today, that has a majority who sides with that. And that was one of the cases where Clarence Thomas actually admitted that he himself was a product of what we call affirmative action,
Yes.
but that it was time for affirmative action to end.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that bit of history. And then can we just bring the mic up here? Yes, go ahead. You can stand up, please. And say your name also. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Estelle Williams, Dr. Estelle Williams, surgeon at UW. Period.
Okay.
I think historical context is always great, and I think that's one of the things that we're recognizing is history and how it has set a tone of intentionality in what we see and what results today.
Yes.
And I always go back when I teach my students about the impact of the Flexner Report and how that actually shaped and formed medical education today, and how after the Flexner Report, all but 2 of the institutions that trained Black physicians in America was shut down. And beginning at that time point from 1913 until 1970, 98% of physicians trained in the US were white.
Yes, thank you. So Flexner Report, how many people have heard of the Flexner Report? So it sounds like a good number of people in the room. So thank you so much for mentioning the Flexner Report. And so I think it's important, as you said, to understand the history. So it actually took thousands of injured Civil War veterans in the North for white medical schools to even consider accepting a handful of Black medical students. In the South, it was only after Reconstruction that Black medical schools opened, Meharry and Leonard medical schools, to name a few. And so by 1905, they had trained about 1,500 Black physicians. Sounds good, right? And so each of those doctors trained to train a new generation of doctors, and so on and so on. And then 1910, the Flexner Report hit. And so let me tell you about Abraham Flexner. So he was an education specialist. He visited over 155 US and Canadian medical schools, and he was commissioned by the American Medical Association, which is the oldest and largest organization of physicians and has its own storied past with discrimination and racism. But he was commissioned to hold the schools in US and Canada against the gold standard of Johns Hopkins or the Western European schools. So to look at the percentage of physician scientists on faculty, or to look at what was the quality of the laboratory facilities, or what was the admissions criteria that was being used. He actually also was an avid racist with power and influence. He once wrote, "Not only does the Negro himself suffer from hookworm and TB, he communicates them to his white neighbors." So he believed that Black people were dirty. He also believed that the only reason why Black students should be in medical school was as sanitarians, so to prevent white students from getting ill. So his report actually led to the standardization of medical schools. It closed not only Black medical schools, but white medical schools as well. But at that point, the process required for medical schools to have the resources and wealth to maintain their quality education. So tell me, what do you think about historically Black medical schools at the time? Not saying that they didn't have or give quality education, but did they have the same resources? Why wouldn't they have the same resources? Right. So the legacy of slavery, not having the endowment, not having generational wealth. And so, as you said, tell me your last name. Dr. Williams said, the report led to the closure of 5 out of 7 of the historically Black medical schools that were open at that time, leaving behind Howard and Meharry. So fast forward to June 2020, I am on the app formerly known as Twitter, and an article from the Journal of American Medical Association comes up, and it estimates that if those 5 medical schools had remained open, they would have trained between 25,000 and 35,000 Black physicians. So 25,000 and 35,000 Black physicians. When you hear those numbers, what do you think? The impact that is lost, right? Like, I think about the number of patients that could have been cared for. I think about the number of trainees that could have been mentored. I think about just the research that could have been done, not just on Black health, but on health in general, right? And so I think of it as really profound. So what do you think, and I also want to use this moment to reimagine this moment in particular, how things could be done differently, right? So what if that Flexner report had not happened? How would things look different today, not just in terms of numbers? Can someone share, like, what's the beauty that could have happened? Or I actually want to talk about more intangibles. Representation. Okay, so representation. What else? What about our patients? What about our communities? Does someone want to raise their hand and say something? Yeah, come over here. Hello. Hi.
My name is Monique, and I would say that there would be fewer Black women that would have died during childbirth, and fewer Black babies that would be motherless.
Thank you. Anyone else? And so, yes, Dr. Scott.
Hi, Dr. Blackstock, everyone.
Hi.
I continue to think about the number of Black residents who are being forced out for professionalism and not really about their academic performance. And so had those 20 to 40,000 Black physicians still been present, they would have had someone to not only mentor them, but to protect them. That's
So
what
protection
I think about.
also.
Yeah, to protect
Thank
them from
you.
the very
Thank you for-
institutions that
yes.
did what they did. So we don't have that sanctuary of being or growing up to be, a Black physician who feels that they belong in that space without those mentors and people.
Yes, thank you for that. Okay, we have one more comment, then I'll go on. Go ahead. Yes.
Thank you, Edwin Lindo. It's good
Oh my
to see you
gosh.
again.
I didn't
I know.
recognize you.
I got older.
Hello, my
I'm
friend.
older. It's so good to
So
see
good
you.
to see you.
Yeah, you're doing
good to see you.
amazing.
The feeling is mutual.
I'm imagining all the Black hospitals that would exist throughout the country, and people can say, I feel safe going there. Where right now, you can imagine a Black hospital. We always say, oh, but we need them to have these institutions. I think we would have had a different imagination.
I think so too. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, so all of that. And so that's why I want us to be in this, because I also feel about this moment now, and I know I told Dr. Terry this, that I really want us to think about how we can do things differently, because I think we think a lot about, of course, there's a lot of grief happening right now, especially with the defunding of really important programs. But, I will say this, that some of the social institutions that existed were not really caring for our communities in the way that they deserved. And so we need to really think about how we can do things differently. And so I also say that to get to that 5.4% of Black physicians, to get to that percentage, we have to literally jump through hoops. And while my own mother became such a wonderful physician, her road was full of obstacles and barriers. So I'll tell you a little bit more about her. So even before she made it to medical school, she was born into poverty in Brooklyn, grew up on public assistance. She was a descendant of enslaved Black Americans, and she had never even seen a Black physician in real life. Once at her Catholic high school, my mother told one of the nuns that she had been thinking of trying for a medical degree. The sister laughed at her, despite our mother's excellent grades. Well, maybe you could try to be a social worker, the nun said. And listen, we love our social workers. This is not about us. This is about us being able to encompass all the different roles. Has that ever happened to anyone? Where someone told you, like you told someone you want to do one thing and they told you to do something else? I saw a hand over there. Yeah? I'm sorry. Thank goodness my mother had the tenacity and the focus to continue on. She became the first person in her family to attend college, but she didn't have her first real mentor until then. It was her chemistry professor, Dr. Clyde Dillard, a Black man. He took a vested interest in her academic success, encouraged her to apply to medical school, and then guess what happened? She got accepted to all of her medical schools and chose Harvard Med School. It wasn't an easy journey for her at all, but she eventually became a physician. And of course, on her first day at Harvard Medical School, she asked herself, what am I doing here? Has anyone felt that way? I know I felt that way. The majority of her classmates did not look like her. They were from affluent backgrounds. One was a relative of Jackie Onassis. Several students' parents had written the textbooks they were using. Another student's father had won the Nobel Prize in medicine for immunology. My mother's mom had received her licensed practical nurse certificate after raising 6 children, attending school full-time, working full-time, taking care of her family. My mother's class was actually one of the most diverse at Harvard. It was in the early 1970s, due in part to diversity initiatives, aka affirmative action, at the school that had begun soon after MLK Jr.'s assassination in 1968. So she went to medical school, and the rest is history. So that is her holding us during her second year of residency. Actually, I'll talk about where she did residency, but she looks tired, happy, because she's a resident. She's an internal medicine resident with twins, and that's why she looks exhausted. But at 19, my twin sister and I, we lost our mother to leukemia, acute myelogenous leukemia. She was only 47. It's actually the age I am now. But her legacy continues. My sister and I both became physicians. We both attended Harvard Medical School, becoming the school's first Black mother-daughter legacy graduates. I became an ER physician, and I chose emergency medicine because I thought I'd have the opportunity to serve those most in need. But as time went on, I came to view the ER as the place where our country's social problems come home to roost. People who don't have health insurance are more likely to use the ER for their care, and they're more likely to be sicker. There's so many things I wish I'd known when I was a freshman in college. I didn't know what I didn't know. For example, I grew up in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. I loved my neighborhood, and I loved my neighbors. But I knew my neighborhood looked different than others. Did anyone feel that growing up? Yeah, my neighborhood looked very different. My parents didn't feel comfortable sending us to the public schools there. We didn't have a supermarket. We always had to drive to another neighborhood in Brooklyn. We didn't have parks with lots of trees. I'd even seen several people get shot on my block growing up. I knew some things, but I didn't know why, and when I got older, I learned that my neighborhood was a formerly redlined neighborhood. Basically the result of discriminatory federal housing policies. And so we now know, as I know many of the physicians and health professionals in the room know, but other folks who don't know, we know that formerly redlined neighborhoods now have some of the worst health outcomes, especially if they haven't been gentrified. And so I want to just talk about that a little bit because I had the chance last night to go to Central District, and Dr. Terry and Dr. Carr told me a little bit about the neighborhood, right? And it reminded me just sort of what's happening in that Central District to my neighborhood growing up that has been actually very, very, very gentrified. But I also didn't understand why in the 80s and 90s my neighborhood looked the way that it did. And so I was wondering if that resonates with anyone here, if anyone wants to share anything. Hands? Yeah, I see some hands nodding and some heads nodding. Yes, you want to say something? Okay, so over here.
Thanks. My name is John Vassell. Excuse me, I'm a general internist, born and raised in Bedford-Stuyvesant.
Oh, that's...
And I was the chief medical officer for the Swedish health system. One thing I wanted to say regarding how things might have been different is that there are two different ways of choosing physicians for medical school. The way it's done largely now is it's a way of rewarding an individual for their achievements. That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it, which I think most black medical schools looked at it, is how do we find those people who will make the best physicians for the patients who need them?
Yes.
And so one of the problems with this whole meritocracy system is it ignores the needs of the patients, and it rewards the so-called achievements of the individuals. And I thought about that when you talked about the Black Medical School.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And we also know from a lot of the data that when we look at our Black and brown medical students, that we're more likely to go and serve in our communities afterwards, or we're more likely to go serve in underserved communities. So that already is something that we are sort of thinking about in terms of our journey. But thank you so much for sharing that. Does anyone want to talk about the redlining piece that I mentioned? Oh yeah, I see someone over here.
Hi, my name is Justin Bullock.
Hi, John. Oh, hi.
Great to see you.
Hi, Dr. Bullock. How are you doing?
Good.
You doing?
Yes.
How are you doing?
Yes.
You doing okay? No,
First, thank you so much for being here. One of the things that I was thinking about as you were talking is, so I'm from Detroit. I grew up in an all-black neighborhood. And I think one of the things that, obviously there are many harms of redlining, but for me, I grew up in a community where there were Black doctors, there were Black teachers, there were Black police officers. And so, as we think on the historical harms, I also think we forget about the social capital that is lost from the destruction of those and now gentrification of those communities. And it's not that redlining was good anyway, but that yeah.
Yes, no, same. So growing up, I was surrounded by Black professionals, right? I thought that was the norm in my neighborhood. Was a working class, middle class neighborhood, right? And it had been redlined, but of course I thought that was the norm as well. Yeah. Thank you for that. So just things I want to talk about were just my own journey. There's so much I had to unlearn as I went from child to medical student to practicing physician. And, of course, I talk about in the book how at Harvard Med, during my first year histology course, we actually used the HeLa cells, but we weren't told about that, right? So I didn't realize until I was a practicing physician that we had used the cells from Henrietta Lacks that were taken from her, without her consent. I talk about just that feeling like such a betrayal, right? A betrayal for me, a betrayal for her family. And then, we know that her family was never informed, that they, until recently, were not compensated. So there's just so many, just levels of betrayal with that. And then also thinking about how, what we're taught in medical school, it's we're told this is facts, right? This is the gospel, right? And so, even, thinking about, I know a lot of work has been done at University of Washington by medical students around kidney function, but, this idea that Black bodies are different, right, or biologically different, feeds into this notion that, in our EMRs, if we're having these two different sets of vital signs for African American and non-African American patients, that becomes absorbed by people in terms of thinking about people being biologically different, and that impacts how we decide care about patients. And, thinking about how 14,000 Black patients had to be reprioritized on the kidney transplant list in the last few years because of that race correction factor. So, these ideas, are not just myths that people hold in their heads, but they end up being a matter of life and death for our patients. And again, all of that I had to unlearn. And I think about my experience, when I went from Harvard Medical School, I went back to Brooklyn, New York. I trained at Kings County Hospital, the same hospital my mother worked at, because I really wanted to. I actually didn't apply to any of the Harvard teaching hospitals. And when I matched at Kings County, we call them society masters, he looked at me like I had lost my mind. And he said, "Are you happy?" And I said, "Yes. I want to go home. I wanted to go back home," and I was the first Harvard medical student to match at Kings County Hospital. I know. So I made another sort of history, but it really was I talk about my residency as being really a pivotal moment for me in becoming a physician, because it really helped me to understand how the disease and illness I saw in my patients was truly a manifestation of upstream factors. And I talk in the book about one of my patients, who's actually a composite of my patients, Jordan, who he had sickle cell disease. And I have to say that when I was in medical school, I didn't interact with many patients who had sickle cell disease. But at Kings County, a lot of our patients had sickle cell disease. And I didn't understand why so many of them were coming to the emergency department. And then I quickly understood why. Because the disease had been racialized as a Black disease. Do people know in the audience, not the healthcare professionals, but sickle cell disease, it's an inherited disease, inherited genetic disease, but do you know which countries or which parts of the world people are afflicted with it come from? Yes? So West Africa is one, but also there are many other places. I'm sorry? India. So yeah, India, actually some of the countries in Mediterranean, Italy, where else? Actually, South America, Saudi Arabia, and yes, it is because of most often in areas where malaria is endemic, but because most of the people who live in the United States who have sickle cell disease are Black, or the disease has been racialized as Black. People think of it as a Black disease, even though it is not. And so because of that, when you compare it to other inherited diseases, like cystic fibrosis or hemophilia, it hasn't received the attention or funding that those other diseases have, even though it's been described more than 100 years ago. Right? Yes?
Can I add a little bit?
Yes. Oh, yes, please. Go ahead.
Sorry. And we actually so Uché was on my podcast. We're close friends. I care about you so much.
Yes.
And so about this point is many people don't really see it as a Black disease. At UW, the majority of people in the sickle cell floor are Black. And so if we do data, it suggests, it must be a Black person disease. Well, this disease is concentrated, again, West Africa, the place where we stole people, forced them here, right. And so we artificially created an N for our research that suggested that it's a Black disease, and it's not true.
Right.
But we make it biological to say we're going to pathologize you, and you are now the problem.
Right.
And so to reinforce your point,
yes.
Exactly that.
No, thank you for that. And I think also the other piece, I don't know if you've heard this, but there's also an association with breast cancer. So there is a specific type of breast cancer that patients actually with sickle cell trait develop. And so I feel like that just throws something else sort of into the mix. So there are, we think of cancer that there are genetic factors, but this directly is because of an inherited trait from, that people in West Africa developed, that we were brought here, and now we're here with sickle cell disease, sickle cell trait, and actually in breast cancer. And so I think that's why also it's really important to understand the history and just how everything progresses. So thank you so much for adding that part. But the one thing also that I learned from Jordan is not to always listen to my attendings. So my attendings would say, well, how do you know he's in pain? How do you know he's in pain? How do you know someone's in pain? Right, they tell you, exactly. But they would say, look at his heart rate. Look at his blood pressure. And sometimes those would be normal. But I was, and not by all my attendings, but I was taught to doubt my patients. So I was thinking, Jordan really showed me how, sort of like on an interpersonal level that stigmatizing, like the bias happens, but also because the systemically things had failed him, he was also in the ER. And that's what so many of our patients had to deal with. And it was one winter in my second year of residency, after coming back from a short vacation, that I actually had found out that he passed away. And he was only 34. He'd been admitted to the ICU with acute chest syndrome, which is a common, very deadly complication from sickle cell disease. He'd gotten IV antibiotics, a breathing tube, but he didn't make it. And when I found out, I remember running to the closest bathroom, closing the door, and just crying. And I felt like we had failed him. And I felt like there were so many patients that we had failed. But it took me going through medical school, becoming a physician to really see the truth. And once I saw the truth, I couldn't unsee it. And the truth is, I wrote Legacy for my younger self. This is a book I wish I could have read when I was 18 years old. And to be honest, the reality of racial health inequities had not hit me until about 5 years ago when it was in March of 2020. I was working in urgent care, and I told some people this story earlier. In my hometown of Brooklyn, New York, we were the epicenter of the pandemic, and literally within days, my truly diverse patient population, truly diverse, became Black and brown within days. And they were all essential workers. They were all people who could not stay home, who could not work remotely. And so I knew at the time the virus was going to devastate our communities. And I remember walking into what seemed like an endless number of exam rooms. I shared this story in the book, to find a young Black woman sitting on the exam table. And when I walked in, she was bent over, her head was in her hands, and she looked up at me and I said, "Hi, I'm Dr. Blackstock, nice to meet you." And she said, "Can I ask you something?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Are you Black?" And I realized that those were the very early days. I was covered head to toe in PPE. I even had shoe covers on. I had double masks, I had goggles, my locks were all up. And I told her, I said, "Yes, I'm Black." And she said, "Thank you, doctor. At least I know you'll listen to me." And she just released her breath and almost like collapsing on the exam table. And I said, "I promise." And I have to admit to you, I was so proud to be that physician she needed in the moment, but it also made me really sad. And I knew that I had to write about what I was seeing. So I actually started writing op-eds in 2020. I'd written some before. I wrote about leaving academic medicine, but I started writing op-eds about the virus, how even before all the data came out. By the end of March, I'd written my first op-ed about what I thought was going to be the impact on our communities, because I know how racism works on our social determinants of health. And writing a few op-eds turned into radio and TV interviews, and then I developed actually exclusive contract with MSNBC. And I have to say that for me, that was being on air was a form of advocacy. It was making sure that we were communicating important information to our communities. It was rapidly changing, and I told some people earlier that I think it was the first time people saw a Black physician on TV. Because I tell them, people still stop me and say, "I got vaccinated because of you. I sent my children back to school because of you." And so not only did I increase awareness, but my words informed legislators to make significant health policy decisions for our communities. I spoke to a legislator in Colorado, a Black woman, who told me that an article that I wrote with my twin sister about the vaccine rollout and how we should actually lower the age for Black Americans, because a lot of the comorbidities we carry because of structural racism actually ages our bodies, right? And so if we're 50 years old and you're having cutoffs at 65, we're not going to be included. And she actually integrated that into the vaccine rollout in Denver. So I could have never imagined my life would take this direction. I now do the work that aligns with my purpose, vision, and values, but it all started with my mother, Dr. Dale Blackstock. I miss her so much. And there were so many others like my mother in her neighborhood, I realized, and my mother was simply one of the lucky ones that got through. You know, I think about all of the people that she grew up with who could have had the same opportunity to do what their families wanted them to do or to live their highest, their dreams. But because of poverty, because of structural racism, they could not. And so legacy is a celebration of my mother's hard work. It's also acknowledgement that the road is made much harder for us, accessing resources and opportunities and finding mentoring and sponsorship. It's all harder. And I know that this current moment feels very tragic and chaotic, but I also think it's a pivotal opportunity to think about how we can reimagine how to do things better for our communities. Black patients and patients of color deserve the best care and should not be treated differently. And so I'm just curious, like I always talk about, I'm so inspired by the Black Panthers, always inspired by the work that they did in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, because I feel like they were truly thinking about what we call health equity, then, even though it didn't have that name, right? So thinking about what does health look like? It's not just about access to quality healthcare, right? It's about making sure that people don't have food insecurity, right? Making sure that they can visit their loved ones who are incarcerated, right? Keeping that bond. So I'm just curious, like I know that our communities have a lot of the solutions already. That's the other piece. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I'm curious about what you've seen that gives you hope in our communities. Okay, you talked already. So I just want one. I'm going to call on you. But can one other person who hasn't talked? Yes, over here. I'm going to come to you. I promise.
What gives me hope are people like you that amplify your voice and lift the rest of us.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you. But I know there's some community organizations here. I want to hear about some of the work that you're doing so that other folks in the room can support you. Is there anyone else? Yes.
Hi, my name is Admiral. I'm one of the radiology residents at UW and at Howard University College of Medicine graduate. Hi. Thank you. And I'm so thankful that you're here. Just seeing you being here gives me just a lot of encouragement and allows me to realize that there's so much that we're doing in the world. Right now, even with radiology and with residents that I'm working with, we're reaching out to high school students and bringing them to the university, getting students excited about going into medicine, things that I didn't have that opportunity in high school or middle school. So I'm happy that I have this opportunity right now to do that little piece, but at least encouraging students. And then they reach out to me and they're like, later on, say what they're doing in life, and I love that so much. I even had a medical student that I was talking with, and now he is going through his applications, going to radiology or thinking about it. And I'm like, blessings, because this is the best field. But so I'm so thankful that you're here and continue doing the work that you do and inspiring others as we all do.
Thank you. Okay, Doctor.
The last remaining clinic started by the Black Panther Party is in the Central District of Seattle.
So that's why I left your comment for last. Yeah.
It's the Carolyn Downs Clinic. Carolyn Downs was a Black Panther. Unfortunately, she died of a hematologic malignancy at a very early age, and they named the clinic after her, and it's still around.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, Dr. Carr.
Thank you so much, Dr. Blackstock. This has been an amazing lecture. I will just answer the question. the pandemic and after George Floyd was murdered, many of us thought about what we needed to do for our communities. And one of the things that I did with 10 other Black gastroenterologists was start an organization called the Association of Black Gastroenterologists and Hepatologists. And we are squarely in Black communities trying to make sure that, at least in terms of gastrointestinal health, our communities have what we need. We just launched an ad campaign called "The Doctor Will See You Now."
I saw it. Beautiful.
And we are so excited about that. And just bringing awareness to, what Black people have to do when they just go to the doctor. They dress up just to be taken seriously. And also, we have built a tool for patients so that they can go online and, go prepared for their doctor's visits with questions. And so these are just some of the things that are going on.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Carr. Okay, yes.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Margaret
my
Toalawi,
friends.
family physician. I think about pipeline programs. I'm a product of a pipeline program. In 2004, I did a pipeline program at the University of Washington when I was deciding if I was going to be a doctor or not. And here I am, all these years later, practicing. Think about the work of Dr. Williams, who continues to lead pipeline programs at the University of Washington. Yeah, Doctor for a Day, UDOC. So these pipeline programs work. I'm a product, right? And I have students who come and who I mentor and still connect with. And when they tell me they get into medical school, I get so excited. So they work. So
they do.
Yeah.
That's why we need to keep supporting them, right? In whatever form, right? Yes. Okay, it's telling me I have to wrap up. Okay, so I just have a little bit to tell you about. So, it's talked about my mom a lot, and I love the fact that my mother and her colleagues recognized in the 80s, what the work that was needed to be done, right? They recognized that then. And I think about the work that my sister and I do, and it's really to continue their legacy. And on my graduation day from medical school, unfortunately, because my mother had passed away when I was in college, she wasn't there physically. But my grandmother's best friend, Miss Aileen, was there. And so I wrote about her in my book, so I'll tell you a little bit about her. She's an ordained minister from Alabama. She reminded me a lot of my late grandmother. They used to, like I said, best friends. She's very no-nonsense. And she had cared for my mother when my mother was sick with leukemia, taking her to and from her appointments, cooking for her. And that day at our graduation ceremony, because my sister's name starts with an O and mine starts with a U, her name was called first and then mine. And literally, I was like, wait, is someone? I heard someone yelling my mother's name. And it was Miss Aileen. I looked out into the audience, and she was saying, and actually, my family and friends were on either side of her. She was wailing, and she said, "Dale." My mother's first name, Dale. And she said, "Dale, your babies." And I knew at that moment that Miss Aileen, she deeply understood, right, in a very visceral way, the magnitude of what was happening at that moment, the the generations of struggle, the perseverance and commitment. It wasn't just about us. It's never just about us, right? It's always about the ancestors. And that day, while I didn't know where my path would take me, I knew I needed to create a legacy for future generations, just like my mother had done. So 5 years ago, I left my academic job, and I finally felt the freedom to speak truth about racial health inequities and racism. And I didn't know where my journey would take me, but now I see it as my legacy. I documented what I saw, and I shared it with the world. And this was my path, this is my work, but it's not the only way. I want you all to find yours. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Blackstock. Thank you. We have some questions that have been sent in online, and we're also going to invite audience members to come up to the microphone and ask questions. And so just while folks are kind of formatting their questions, I'm going to start off with one that has already been sent in. You spoke so eloquently about racism and racial disparities and patient outcomes. What strategies have you endorsed that you see works to improve these differentials in patient treatments?
I don't think there's just one answer, but I think accountability and systems making sure that they have processes in place to ensure accountability is really important. And so that's why, especially in this moment that we're in, collecting the data, having some form of the data is important, because if the data is not there, we can say the problem doesn't exist. But one way that, that through my consulting firm, we've worked with organizations is really making sure that they have a way of tracking not only the metrics, but really working with community members to determining what is a helpful metric to measure, because it may be different for the community versus the hospital. And so making sure that there are just processes in place that if we're seeing differences in terms of prescribing habits among difference in patient demographics, that we have a system that will alert us in real time, and that we have an intervention and there's accountability for it. Audience questions? And actually, I'm sure Dr. Scott can answer that question very well. She's expert in that. Oh yes, sorry. See you.
My name is Gus. I had a question previously when you talked about the race correction that denies Black patients access to organs and how there's a lack of will amongst what I suspect is white medical professionals. It reminded me of the part in your book about the pulse oximeters, where you presented the almost identical logic where this has been a problem for decades and failing Black patients, but there's a lack of will, same suspects, white medical professionals, where even in the face of scientific evidence, they refuse to make changes. Dorothy Roberts, she made the same point when she visited us last year, where she said, you present evidence and white medical professionals refuse to make changes. And I just have to conclude, white people remain dedicated to practicing white supremacy racism. That is the obstacle that is in front of us. Even when you mentioned the Flexner report, my thought was, if that didn't exist, it would be something else to stop Black physicians. Some other form. I guess to get your thoughts in quickly, Meharry Medical College, they were subjected to racist attacks like days ago. They had to cancel class.
Yes. No, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I feel like a lot of the evidence that you've just shared, those 4 examples, show us that there is a lot of resistance to change, right? And that at the cost of our lives. And I think that's why some of the comments that were made earlier about, I think, us having institutions that, that we're leading, that we are in the community, I think it's very important. I think we could avoid a lot of that, but also, even the pulse oximeter, that was something it's not even individuals. It's the FDA has known for over 30 plus years. Right? And so I think part of that, I think, is our job is to really communicate, make sure that our patients and make sure our communities have the information they need to make informed decisions. So that, I think that piece is really important, and that's really where we play a role in, and I even like Dr. Carr talking about a lot of the preventive, health work that you're doing is like just making sure that our communities know what they need to know. And I feel like it should never be the onus should never be on the patients when it's a systemic problem, but at the same time, how can we fortify ourselves enough? And it can never be enough, sadly.
Hello, my name is Victoria Vassell, and I work at Harborview Medical Center, our public hospital here. And long COVID is part of our department, and I was just wondering what you thought about how some of the effects of maybe social media have been harming some of our, efforts to reach out to minority communities, because we've seen a whole lot of very aggressive campaigns, like anti-vaccine campaigns, misinformation, and your Harvard Med School classmate and Surgeon General of the state of Florida, who is also
I know. I have to say, we are aghast. Like, we have actually a group thread where we're just like, what is going on? But we also feel, I'm sorry, I know you're asking your question, but we also feel like
that's basically the end.
What is the best way to approach that? Sorry, no, yes,
Right, well,
go
that was
ahead.
kind of it, because it's not just these weirdos online. It
Right.
is actual Surgeon General of the state of Florida and possibly our next U.S. Surgeon General. So, unless they get the lady who didn't finish the residency. But I was just wondering, yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious what my colleagues think. 'Cause to me, that's a tough one. But I also am curious, but because, we were thinking about penning an op-ed or just, something saying, we do not agree with what Dr. Latipo is saying, and these are the reasons why. But we thought that actually would come off very well, why should we believe this other group of Harvard doctors, right? And so really thinking about what is the best way that we can communicate to communities that what he's saying is not accurate. But also, I don't know if you saw, there was a video recently where he was asked if he vaccinated his own children, and he refused to answer. So he probably vaccinates his own children. But all that to say is, again, it's all about really getting, how do we make sure that our communities get the information they need? And so I think also, going back to trusted messengers in the community that already have the relationships. I think, I know in New York City, we're doing a lot of work with community health workers. And again, I think that is a model that we have underutilized, that we don't compensate them, they don't get health insurance. They really are gems that we need to take advantage of, using more in the system.
Thank you. And for the record, the private schools that his kids, RFK Jr.'s kids, and DeSantis' kids all require vaccinations. It's no opt-out.
Oh, there's a line behind you.
Sorry.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Karen Thickman, and I'm going to try and read this.
Yes,
so,
yes. Yes.
I just want to say, so it seems looking at that there seems to be a problem not only of a lack of Black doctors, but a lack of doctors overall and physicians that are available. And as a person who trains students who go to medical school, it looks like to me that there's a limit to the number of people and that the medical schools are keeping that limit and the number of students. So are there ways that you can envision growing the number of physicians as well as the number of Black physicians that are available to treat these communities?
Yes, so I have several answers to that. So I am actually all for health professions. I don't think there should be physician supremacy. I really am all about the team. So I think, nurses, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, our allied health professionals. I do think that making sure that we have representation in all those fields are very important. But yes, there is the issue of there is a physician shortage, and it's projected to get worse and worse. But this is why I also don't have the American Medical Association. They have a campaign called Scope Creep. I don't know if people have heard of this. I actually don't. I'm not. It means that other health professionals are operating outside of their scope of practice. But the fact is that our communities need help. We need health professionals, and so in whatever form that comes in, it's important. But I do think that I would love to see. I don't know what we can do. I don't know if maybe people have some feedback about in terms of the funding for Yes. Yes. Okay. Go ahead. Yes. Go ahead, Dr. Williams. Yeah. Go ahead. Here, hold on. No, you have to use the microphone. Yes. So make sure people hear.
I appreciate the sentiment that was said, but I would be remiss to say that we have an over-representation of white doctors. I'm just gonna put it out there, y'all, because we're not gonna start with. I love and appreciate the fact that we have a shortage, but we still, as Dr. Vassell discussed very eloquently, we still have a system that prioritizes a certain demographic of people as the only ones who are educated and intelligent enough to enter a profession, and we relegate all those others to the sidelines and don't even give them opportunities. And we are just as talented and able, and the data continues to support that when you have one Black doctor, it is published. One Black doctor that enters into a neighborhood, it elevates and improves the health of the entire community.
Everybody.
So I think we have to actually recognize, especially this idea around where we are as a community, where we are. Look about this room. We're in Seattle, one of the whitest cities, but look how diverse this room is. So we're beyond the idea of this being a homogenous community. We have to have representation from each and every group. And we talk about where resources are continued to be funneled. It is still funneled into and for communities that don't need it, and relegates all of those who are at representing any other demographic to the margins, and we spend less than 25 cents on the dollar for programs that help to invest in children at the elementary school level with engaging them in STEM education, when we know that when we engage with students starting at the 3rd grade level, that's where you will see the highest return for those who are able to enter into STEM professions and health careers. So,
yes, I love my audience. Okay, so you're finishing up.
Thank you, Dr. Williams.
Okay.
And we have time for one more question. So, and then we'll, thank Dr. Blackstock and do our book signing.
Okay.
I feel bad to be the one more question, but I think one of the things that I'm really concerned about, I'm a research scientist, so I'm really tied to the NIH, and that's where my money comes from, but so are a lot of my friends who are clinicians.
Yeah.
And they're doing clinical work that is very important for our communities, and I have friends that have lost their funding this year because of the work that they're doing. And so I just want to comment and then a question. I just wanted to say that the kind of work that you're doing right now is really so important because a lot of us are kind of muzzled, right? We can't say what we need to say, or we can't get the funding to do the work that needs to be done. And that's also the question. Do you have any thoughts about that? Because you left academia, but many of us are still there.
No,
and we have to play, but it's.
I know.
I don't know what to do, and I don't know what to
know.
say to younger generations right now.
Well, one is to say, just because you leave doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make it like
No.
necessarily financially easier. Because remember this year, 300,000 Black women lost jobs this year.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm saying you have freedom to say something.
I wasn't saying that. No, I wasn't. No, I'm sorry. I wasn't implying that. I'm just saying that the struggle continues even outside. And I think sometimes even being able to talk about it, as a Black woman, I still feel vulnerable. Yeah. I want to make sure people know this, that it's not just I'm saying it because I can. I say it because I feel like I have to say it, right? And yes, I have a freedom that I didn't have when I was in academic medicine, meaning I didn't have to worry about losing that job, but I don't have that job anymore. And now I'm self-employed, and that's a whole other thing. That's a whole doing this work. But all that to say is, I think this is an opportunity for. I've seen philanthropic organizations stepping up, right? I think it's really clear that we cannot rely on the federal government for primarily funding research. Like this is right. And so
anything.
Yeah, or anything, or anything. Yes. And I've also seen community sort of crowdsource funding as well for health equity efforts too. So, but I understand. But yes, I want to see it from non-traditional sources, and the one source I've seen stepping up more so is philanthropic sources, and also they have the money, but it's only going to be a fraction of what obviously the federal government was able to give. I know, yeah.
We are so appreciative, Dr. Blackstock, for leading us in this wonderful discussion, and thank you for your insights, and thank you for your service, and thank you for your leadership. And let's give her a big round of applause.
Thank you.
So in a few minutes, she'll be back to sign her book. So we want you all to.
Yes, and I know a lot of people already have the book. But I also want to know, for Black authors, like every book that's sold, even if it's another book, it makes a difference. No, just for who comes after us, I will just say that. The numbers make a big difference. I want to say that I was very obviously excited to be on the New York Times bestseller list for 2 weeks when the book came out, but I know a lot of it was because of the support that I received from our community. And so I'm really grateful for that, and also want to make it easier for other Black authors to get book deals and to also sell in those numbers as well. Thank you. Okay.